All right, so today I just want to talk about credit cards. And one thing is that, first of all, they're terrible to have. And second of all, there's ways to minimize the debt that you have for free without doing anything at all other than placing a few phone calls. So let me just talk about me a little bit first. I had credit cards since I've been 18 years old. They were very small cards, $500 balances, things like that. And then as I got older, obviously I made more money, and so they started giving me all kinds of credit. At one point, I think I had $35,000 worth of available credit to me if I wanted to spend it. The thing that I did was when I was in my early 20s, when I was 20 years old, when I was in my early 20s, I had kids. So that right there, the total expense of all of that and everything, it's just astronomical what it costs when you're making hardly any money. And at the time I was actually in trade school for HVAC. So that's kind of where my journey started to go crazy. Was I started doing paintless dent removal, started making some decent money, and then the credit card companies started opening up all the doors to me, because they want you to spend money and obviously carry balance and pay them every month. So moving forward, I was working at the job doing dent removal, and I wanted to go buy a home. So I went to purchase a home, and because of my credit card debt, which really wasn't that crazy at the time, I think it was $6,000 or $7,000, I couldn't get approved for more than like $175, I think. And where I live, you can't buy anything for that. So I was looking at the outside of that area. I was looking at I live in Connecticut, so I was looking in like the cheaper parts of Connecticut, and at that rate, I said, well, I don't want to really buy a house in a cheaper area where the taxes are high and the schools are not very good because I have young children. So I said, well, let me clean up my debt, and so I started paying down my debt at that rate. Started saving some money for a down payment, and then I just got really depressed and miserable at my job. But I had to keep going to my job because I had to keep paying my bills, and obviously you have to work and make money. So it was all a terrible cycle. And so what I happened to do was I moved back home to my parents' house, and I started working on their house. It's a big old Victorian house, and we made it into a two-family. So me, my wife, and kids are there at that point, and we're still here now, and we're still working on it, and it takes forever, but I'm a lot happier now than I've ever been. And when I first moved in, I left my job. That was the only way that I could do it and get the house ready to move into, because the house was unfinished to where we didn't have bedrooms and stuff for me and the kids. So I left my job, I worked on that and made it so we could move in. And it was probably the most stressful time of my life for me and my wife and my parents and even my extended family as well. So it was very difficult. Very stressful, and what added on to it all was the credit card debt. And then once I basically depleted my savings just from the cost of the children and everything, and food and everything, I wasn't making enough money with what I was doing at the time, working part-time at another place. So I just kept spending more money every month, and it was just it was a lack of income. It wasn't really extravagant spending, but it was just a lack of money coming in, which is a lot of people's problems. Now, hindsight, I probably should have went out and got another job temporarily to help out with that, income problem until I was able to do what I do now, which is I had a 2-year non-compete with my business that I worked at, so I'm able to do it on my own, and I have been doing it now successfully for a few years now. So that's where my debt journey kind of started. During that time period, I kind of racked up a lot of debt. Now, last year, I actually paid off about $8,000 of that credit card debt. And a lot of this credit card debt is debt I've had now for several years, and it's like you get the bill every month, and I just pay slightly above the minimums, and it'll take 13 years to pay it off or something crazy like that. So I really made it a point last year to start paying this down and getting rid of it, because it's so much more freeing to be able to take off the afternoon, not have to worry about how you're going to pay all your bills at the end of the month. So there's that whole thing. The first thing that you can do, this is actually what I did this weekend, I didn't even really think about it, but I called up my credit card companies, and you can do this. It doesn't cost you anything, and you don't have to be nervous or anything about it either. These are, people that they actually work for you because you're paying them. So you call them up and you ask them if you are on the lowest interest rate available at the current time. And so I called up 5 companies, all right? The first 3 I called, they were small balance cards, like $500 limit, $1,000 limit type things. They weren't maxed out even. They had just balances on them. So those card companies, all 3 of them were like, nope, sorry, there's nothing we can do. That's the lowest rate available right now. One of them actually was an LL Bean credit card. I don't know which bank they go through. I think they just got bought out by maybe Capital One. They said, in the terms of service, you're not allowed to have a different interest rate than whatever we say. So there's no way to get out of that. There's no introductory rates or anything available. One of the bank accounts, credit card companies I contacted, I was actually surprised by because they transferred me to like 3 different people. I couldn't hardly understand the people I was speaking to because of a very thick accent. So it was very difficult for me to even talk to these people on the phone. And then when I finally got to someone I could speak to, they told me, I felt like they wanted to try to trick me because they said the only way that we can give you a lower interest rate is if we have you agree to new term of service, which includes a higher minimum payment as well as higher late fee payments. Now, I've never had any credit cards go to collections. I've never had any late payments. I've never had any thing like that happen to me, luckily. So I never had those issues. But they said you have to agree to that for us to allow you to lower your card. So I was like, all right, fine. So I did that. And then they transferred me to somebody, and that person said, oh, there's no current rates available to you. And so I'm like, well, then why did you have me agree to terms of service? So I asked to speak to the supervisor, and then the supervisor gave me 0% interest for 6 months. So that was actually my bigger card. It was a $5,000 limit card, and it has a pretty good balance on it. And so when I called them up, I was so surprised to hear about that terms of service agreement, and then it's like they're trying to con me. I felt absolutely tricked by them. So when the supervisor came on, she told me 6 months of 0% interest on all current balance as well as future purchases. Obviously, I wasn't going to make any more purchases with the card, but I would say a lot of people probably would, especially with 0% interest as an enticement like it is. So I said, yeah, I'll take that. So that card moving forward, you basically, I'll keep paying more than I've been paying on it. But I won't be getting charged. I think it was like $120 or something in interest every month, or $90. I think the whole payment's $100 and something dollars. But I think it's like $90 to $100 interest every month that doesn't even go to the card. It just goes to them, and you're only paying $30 towards your balance or whatever crazy numbers I got involved with at the time. So that's essentially, we're looking at like $600-700 in free interest that I don't have to pay. They can go right towards the balance of the card. So that's right there is a huge savings. So if you are struggling, or if you have credit cards that you're paying down and working on that, then call them up and see what they'll say, because this is really awesome news. Now, I had another card that they also dropped my interest rate from, I think it was like 18% down to 15.99 or something. So they lowered the interest rate quite a bit, and that's indefinitely on that balance. Any new purchases will obviously go up. It's variable, but like I said, I'm all done with the spending. Now, there's that whole aspect there. So the next thing is, that obviously doesn't cost you anything to do. So go do that if you have credit cards. It's not going to hurt. And always make sure you speak to the supervisor, because the general person that you speak to isn't going to be able to help you in most cases. And actually, one company, they said they would, and then he said, oh, there's nothing I can do. And even though he agreed that the interest rate was higher than all the other cards I have. So moving forward, I'm obviously paying down the rest of my debt. I'm hoping to be out of debt at the end of this year at the latest. And then moving forward, I have no desire, other than maybe buying a house, that I would go into debt for. It's not anything I want to get involved with. And then once you're out of debt, there's just no way. I don't think I could ever go back. So a lot of people will buy vehicles that are really expensive. My truck actually, the transmission croaked on it on my way home from work one night. And I basically had, at that time, I didn't have all too much money. I think I only had a few $1,000s in the bank. And I actually had one of my dealerships owed me a big amount of money. But I wasn't going to get it for like 30 to 60 days. That's just kind of how that whole pay goes for me when I'm self-employed. You never know when the next check is going to come. So I went out and I got a lease, and I mainly got that for a business aspect. If it wasn't for the need of reliability, I probably would have just threw a used transmission in my truck and kept driving it. But I go to people's homes and I need to have something reliable. And so that's when I decided to get my RAV4 that I have now, and it's very affordable, and I kind of just, it's no different than my rent that I pay. I pay for my shop and I pay for my car. My car is $329 a month, and then the insurance is actually pretty, I think it's like $100 and something a month for that, and then my business insurance, obviously. So the other thing I would say about that is, if you are in a position where you have to get something, don't go out and get, you know, a $600 a month 4Runner that I would have loved to have. Get the cheap vehicle that can get you on your feet and get you to work. That's a worst case. Now, I wouldn't suggest doing that for most people. I would probably say just go out and get a used beater that will get you, you know, where you need to go, and under most conditions it's going to be pretty reliable. So keep that in mind. The other thing about it's crazy what, you know, with the cars, leasing is a terrible idea. And again, it's like, that's all done out of desperation. And that's how most people actually spend their money, is out of desperation. You know, I need to do this, I need to do that. And so I hope that this video helps you out. If you're in, you know, a similar position where you're working on paying down your debt, give them a call and see if they'll work on it. Another thing that you can do, if you have debt that's gone into collections, I haven't had this happen, but if you have debt that's in collections, you can call and actually settle that debt. And a lot of people don't even know that, but you know, if you have a, let's say, a $2,000 card that's been in collections for 4 years, you can pay that. You can, you know, when they call up, you can ask to settle it, and you can basically settle it for a fourth of what you owe usually, from what I read about. And so that to me is crazy, because the credit card companies sold that debt to other people for fractions of what they got it for, what they're into it for. So keep that in mind. Hope you enjoyed the video today, and I hope it helped you out, or if it didn't help you, I hope it helps someone else out that you know. There's a whole bunch of people in the same kind of condition. I happen to know people that are in much worse financial positions than I am, you know, that can't even pay their bills, can't afford to eat, can't afford to, you know, do any of that stuff. So I hope you find some information in this video, and I hope you have a great day today. I know I will have a great day. So God bless and enjoy.